Hello and welcome again to this week's episode in the series Transformation Dynamics, the summer briefing series. Our topic today is organization dynamics. So it's all about change management, scenarios, strategies, and tactics, and with a bunch of simulations, of course, as always. The key question is how to best engage people, stakeholders, and organization. Now, while you were planning this, a straight line of almost a straight line of adoption and a very rapid uptake in your organization, what you often find is a performance gap and a massive shortfall and a big disappointment, of course, that comes with it. So while you think you can do it in a few months to roll out an innovation in an organization and get everybody to adopt the innovation, it might take even longer, quarters or sometimes even years. Really depends on of course, the size of the organization, but also the inherent dynamics. And of course, it comes with a massive delay. So, and that exposes the company to dramatic risk. And even worse, a lot of the transformation initiatives are failing. And sometimes for no apparent reason. And so we're going to take a look at this today, why that is the case. And when an innovation is not coming through and is not being adopted by the organization, typically what happens is that the organization relapses or the people relapse and revert to the known legacy business. And while this is a good short-term fix, of course, it exposes a key strategic risk to the company in the long run, because there was probably a reason why the innovation was put together, and there is no, let's say, business that can grow forever. And so at some point in time, you have to think about how to replace or augment the business with an innovation. So the key question is, what drives these different scenarios? And what is the reason between, let's say, a rapid uptake in some organizations and an overshoot and decline in some other organizations or some other projects? My name is Thomas Wittig. I am the CEO at WITTIGONIA, and I will lead you through the discussion again today. The purpose of today's webinar is to focus in on and zoom in on the system dynamics of organizational change and change management. This is the key topic for today. This is embedded in a larger roadmap, as you know, and each topic you can watch as a standalone topic, but also later we're going to put the elements together, and that's when it gets starting to get really interesting. Now, the question for today is, what are the feedback structures which drive the internal engagement and, let's say, the systemic behavior in an organization, and how can we work with this? So what is the impact of the different performance scenarios? What is the impact on success, and what can we do with it, and what are the key strategies and tactics? Again, I will show a few business scenario simulations again today. And as always, there is more in the advanced topics section. And you are, of course, part of this. So please feel free to suggest and ask about the key scenarios. And I'll be happy to throw in some more simulations that meet your specific requirements. And of course, there are more ideas and templates. So for a quick orientation, we have a comprehensive roadmap. As I explained in the kickoff seminar, the dynamics of transformation initiatives span everything from strategy to development, adoption in the marketplace, organization, and many other topics. And we arrived here almost halfway in our program. So the topic today is organizational change dynamics. And as you may have noticed, each topic is repeated at least one more time. So the second iteration of this topic will be towards the end of the program. And there I want to talk a little bit more about how to shape a transformation initiative also from a project and program management perspective. What happens each week for those who are joining in the midst of the program, which is absolutely appreciated and okay. So each week we are having a free live webinar. The replays are made available on the YouTube channel or in the Academy website. You can see the URL here. And the webinar is usually 30 to 45 minutes long and offers a Q&A time. So if you have questions, please submit them during the webinar, and I will pick them up after the talk. Also, in each webinar, there's a discount down for the extended briefing, which is a dedicated program or learning roadmap that you can take a look at. And the discount down means that we are basically having a discount down program each and every week. There's a special in the webinar available today. And in between, you can also, of course, use the Facebook group, which is related to this program. Now, today's topic will be about a few points. Specifically, I want to speak about how does it actually happen that innovation gets adopted in an organization. So we will review the structures here that leads to an adoption of innovation. And then I want to talk about some typical challenges and failure modes that I have seen in projects. And oftentimes when the projects are being brought then to us to take a look at it for project turnaround, you see all kinds of different things that happen in these projects. And then I will cover already a couple of key strategies and tactics, and I'll give you a checklist at the end of the talk today. As always, I love to work with, let's say, I call this a management flight simulator, which is a dynamic simulation tool. As a system dynamicist, I'm putting together these tools in order to work with clients on change initiatives, so that we're moving above and beyond the qualitative talk of change management, and really can fast forward into the implications of the different strategies and tactics and the management decisions, of course. And in some of the modules, I put together a free online version of this, so you can check this out. Feel free to check this out at your own time. Now, as I mentioned, the introductory offer is displayed only in the webinar. So if you watch this as a replay later, make sure you sign up for the next webinar to secure your access to the program. No risk involved. There's a money back guarantee. So if you really don't like the program, you can always get your money back. That's not a problem at all. So the way to get to the program is you go to academy.wittigonia.com maybe later. But you can also, again, check this out right here from the webinar. If you look to your right side, there should be an offer displayed right now. The YouTube channel is called Wittigonia, and the Facebook group is Dynamics of Transformation. So there you find more feedback and replays. This is our framework that we are looking at. The areas of transformation really cover many different things, everything from strategy, leadership to project dynamics. I covered in an earlier session the dynamics of what it takes to develop a project. So take a look at that and see if you can get some insights out of this for your new development projects. And today, again, we talk about organizational dynamics, and the next topics will be about customer success, supply chain dynamics, and so on. Now, I explained this feedback, this high-level feedback structure in an earlier webinar, and I will come back to that really shortly. Here's a network of feedback loops that we are dealing with, and today we are specifically focusing on the organizational support. And the reason for that is it impacts a lot of the success in different areas. For example, the speed by which we hire more developers and bring in more product innovation, which then drives more progress. So that's a key feedback loop. Another key feedback loop is, of course, by bringing in more salespeople and making sure that they are adopting the innovation, we drive more sales, which means we have more customers. And of course, more customers by the act of word of mouth means we get more customers. And it also means we have more revenue to spend on things like sales, marketing, and of course, product development. So this is what we call feedback loop diagrams. What I want to cover today is a specific subset of these feedback loops. So we will talk about this big feedback loop, which basically means that by the time we hire salespeople and they start to get active, we see more customers coming in, so we generate more revenue, and that also drives more sales that we can hire then again, and more perceived progress. So the reason why I wanted to talk about organizational support in general is that in most organizations, nothing really happens without the people standing behind it, and people, managers, individual contributors. So if there's no support from the organization, there is no point in going to the market. And it often happens in organizations that there is a great initiative, a great innovation, but it never sees the daylight in the market for various reasons. So that's the key for this whole talk. Now, what we encounter often as a key challenges in transformation initiatives are a number of things. So, of course, first of all, to initiate innovation and to secure an organization-wide adoption, so that means that we're not only focusing on a small group of people who is adopting the innovation, but really on the larger organization. And of course, it comes with the requirement to drive a rapid transition often. So once we know that the innovation is a good thing and it's working, we want to drive there very fast. We don't want to take quarters or years even to move to the next generation. This, in fact, is one of the key challenges of growing organization and also growing digital footprints in organizations, that the legacy systems and the legacy products are eating up a lot of the resource and a lot of the cost. So that's why management and the leadership is usually interested in moving the customer base and of course, first the employees to this new business model, because it's fairly costly and it absorbs, the legacy systems absorb a lot of resources. Now, number 4 here on the list is to mobilize the entire organization. That means that people really taking action. They're not just hearing about innovation, but they're really actively adopting it. So that could mean, for example, selling the new product that is out there versus selling what you already know. Or for an organization which is moving from services to product, making sure that you sell the product in addition or instead of the service that you have at your disposal. And then the topic about organizational inertia, I think, is an important one, because oftentimes people in the organization may not make a favorable experience with an innovation, and so they are becoming inactive or resistant to the change initiative. And if there's a series of failed change initiative, it can be even very harmful for the organization and create a distrust and a sense of lack of engagement in the initiative. And last but not least, the management commitment, because managers or line managers in an organization typically have what they consider as the daily business, and they're not waiting for additional work on top of things. So they just want to make the numbers, making sure that the results are coming in. But they also have to think about innovation and driving a change in the organization. Now, what would be the application areas for this thought process here, for the framework? First of all, in terms of organization type, you could think of this as an application in pretty much every organization, from business organizations to public sector entities, but of course also a channel or an ecosystem of sales partners, of suppliers, and even co-developers. So if you want to drive an innovation, you have to move your stakeholders along, and that is the key question, how to do that. In terms of innovation types, this let's say act of organizational transformation, digital transformation, is typically dealing with new products and services, or in moving from a product to a service, or from a service to a product, which is also referred to often as productization. And it can also be a process innovation or technology or internal systems. So think, for example, about the implementation of a new CRM system or an accounting system. So you want to make sure that people are using it, that you don't end up with two worlds in your in one and the same organization. Now, the simple formula for initiating a change, and so that change can happen, is that the perceived benefits and the motivation must be larger than the resistance. So in other words, that the preference for the innovation is larger than the resistance against the innovation. Now, if we break this down, what must happen is, first of all, there needs to be a motivation. There need to be some practical steps so that you can actually make it happen and adopt the innovation, and there should be clear benefits, because if you end up just producing another solution, product, or service, which is basically the same like what you have, there's no incentive for the organization to adopt it. So these all together need to be larger than the assistant, and if one of these is zero or basically non-existent, then that's really usually a problem. Now, what that means in detail is, in terms of motivation, we of course need the management commitment, but also it comes along with a certain positive group pressure. So if the colleagues are using, let's say, a new tool or selling the new product, the others want to follow. And it usually comes also with the dissatisfaction of the status quo. Now, the steps that one can take in terms of initiating the innovation, usually the least common denominator, the easiest thing is to provide information and to provide and disseminate information in the organization, but also success stories. And we will come to that in a minute, why that is important. And of course, the engagement in innovation. So, for example, making people part of the innovation in an early adopter program or things like that is an important way in order to get going. We will see that during the simulations, what the implications are. And of course, trying out new innovation, what I call innovation discovery or process discovery, is an important step for people to get on the bus and be part of the change very early on. Now, the benefits would include, of course, very simple, more output. So let's say you have a new product, you can sell more of the new product to the existing customers, or you can reach out to a larger number of customers. It takes less effort, which means that you have to spend less time on selling the product, and it leads to a faster success. And faster success can be a very formal thing like revenue recognition, which is more like an accounting term, but it means that, for example, if you sell some of the products, you may not be able to account or recognize some of these revenues from these new products on your books immediately. So faster revenue recognition is a key determinant of success, because it shows the progress and it drives the perceived progress in the organization. And the resistance, of course, so the downside here is what all the things that can happen and can go wrong. For example, seeing a number of defects and quality issues usually makes people reluctant and resistant to an organization. And that is not only because they don't like it, but you know, if you bring a product or a service which has a lot of quality issues to your customers which know you, that has a reputation and an image issue for you as a, let's say, professional sales executive or a service manager. Then also inferior performance and the lack of perceived progress are key issues. So if you don't see that the new product is really taking off, then why embark on this new product? And of course, unfavorable word of mouth promotion. So if you hear from other colleagues that this may not be ready yet, the program, or it's not really a big part of the revenue stream moving forward, and it's not contributing to the results, that has an adverse effect. So that is increasing the resistance. Now, let's go into the details and ask the question, how does innovation actually get adopted in an organization? And for that, I want to very briefly revisit what we understand by the feedback structure. So when I talk about feedback structures, I don't mean that you get a pat on your back and somebody says, okay, you have done a great job. By feedback structure, we mean something different in this context. And so think about the number of people in your organization which are using the information as a stock, or let's say a bathtub, which is filling up over time. So for example, you have the number of sales representatives selling the new product. Now, this group is basically the result of all the people who are start using the innovation minus all the people who stopped using the innovation. So that's the key concept here, of course. We call this the flows and the stock of people, or the amount of people that we have. Now, the really important thing here, as a manager or a change agent, change manager or innovator, you cannot directly influence the stock of people you have using your innovation or product. The only thing that you can do is to create the conditions for success. In other words, you can only work with the inflows and the outflows, or on the valves of the inflows and outflows. Now, that's the key concept here, of course. Now, what that means, for example, to put this in a little bit more into a system dynamics lingo here, is in this case, we might have a positive feedback loop. So the more people we have using the information, the more they influence others to join them. We call this a reinforcing or positive feedback loop. And the negative or balancing feedback loop basically means that the people are, in this case, for example, leaving the organization. And sometimes the more people you have leaving the organization, then it accelerates it even more. And as I mentioned before, there are factors which determine this outflow here. For example, the quality, the staffing level, the employee turnover, that could determine how many people are leaving or joining the organization. And it is a matter of delay. So, as I said before, this word of mouth has a delay. So until people really become aware of the great benefits of your new product or service, there might be a delay involved. For example, due to communication time it takes, or due to delayed management information, or all hands meetings, and so on. So this is a very basic and simplified feedback structure, and it has all the elements: the stocks, the flows, the feedback loops, the delays, and the internal or external factors which are determining what is happening to these flows. Now, when I'm working here with what I call the management flight simulators, I take basically the same thing and I turn this into, let's say, a first feedback diagram, and then I'm turning this into a simulation model so that we can actually work with this. And what I'm showing here is a simplified flow. It's simplified, but still fairly complete and coherent. The only thing that we're not showing here is that people joining the organization and people leaving the organization. So it's a contained system for now. Now, what it means is basically we have a number of people in the organization. And what I will show later is an organization of about 1,000 people. Could be 100 or 10, or it could be 100,000 or 200,000 people in the organization. And of course, the larger the organization is, the more difficult it gets to move the ship into a new direction. But what happens during the process of innovation is that a number of people who are potential adopters of the innovation, which means they are they want to actually use the innovation. They start testing it. And so we have a pool of people which we call the adopters trying the innovation. And some of them may not adopt the innovation immediately, so they revert back to become a potential adopter. But those who like it, adopting it, and they become permanent users or permanent adopters of the innovation. And some of them, for certain reasons, like quality issues or dissatisfaction or unfavorable customer feedback, will leave this pool again of adopters of innovation. And that's what I call relapsing. So they start, for example, to become inactive, or as a replacement, to work again with the legacy business. So think about this here. They have tested a new product, and they started selling the products not working so well. So they go back and start selling services. Happens very often to service organizations who want to productize their business. And sometimes they also realize, it may be not so easy to sell a product in an enterprise setting where I have been selling services. It might be a very different skill set that is required. And then after a time, they might re-engage and become adopters again. So it's a fairly contained system. And what is happening here in our focus area is the most interesting part, because we are, of course, interested in this pool of people who have adopted the innovation. And so that is the key focus area. Now, the picture gets a little bit more detailed here, but not too much. And what I want to show is an important feedback loop. So we call this the word of mouth feedback loop, or adoption. The first one we should say is through the act of management push, we call it. So the management says, okay, we want people to test drive this product, or start selling, or do a test market, and they actively move people from this box of potential adopters to become, let's say, an early adopter and trying the innovation. And as the people are becoming the permanent adopters, they will influence those who are not adopters yet. So this is called the word of mouth feedback loop. So it's driven by, of course, a contact frequency. So basically the frequency of how often these two groups meet together, and the probability of the contact with an adopter, or the purchase probability, if you want, or the adoption probability. So in other words, the more people we have in this loop, the more likely it becomes that you will meet an adopter, and through conversations, or let's say meetings in your organization, they will influence the potential adopters and create a pull. That's a very important positive or reinforced feedback loop. And this is a basic structure. It is modeled after, you could say, after the so-called famous Bar's diffusion model, which is a standard model on how to articulate these structures, or very close also to an epidemical model, or from the epidemiology, which works basically the same way. So the people who are infected, once they meet those who are infected, they actually create this pool of people who are, let's say, exposed to a certain agent or disease. And the same thing happens here. So it's very similar. Now, and of course, you have noticed probably the time delays that we have, which are also important. The reason why I articulate it this way is that oftentimes it happens very quickly, that people move away from an innovation and then start selling their tried and tested business that they have, and then it takes a longer time until they re-engage. So they have become careful. That's why we articulate these two flows here also explicitly. Another part of our consideration here is the manager's commitment. Usually nothing happens without manager's commitment, because the managers or leaders in an organization pretty much decide how people focus and how they spend their time. Or let's say they're responsible for rewarding higher performance, so they set the standards. Now, the management commitment can be changed by two factors. One is management gets a goal, and this creates basically a loop here, which basically means, so for example, in month 5, we have the goal that we should support the new initiative. And so then this is adjusting to this new goal. So the management commitment is building up over time. The other factor that is driving management commitment could be driven by the word of mouth, which again is embedded in our adoption feedback loop. And this creates a larger feedback loop here that we are interested in. So from this flow of people becoming adopters and they're generating some revenue, which is not shown here, just a representation of it, from that revenue, the ratio of revenue coming from innovation is increasing, which drives positive word of mouth, which is changing the manager's commitment. And the increased manager commitment is leading them to push more people to adopt the innovation. So that's a larger feedback loop that we are modeling here in our consideration. Now, where does the revenue come from? Here is shown the legacy revenue. So we have a number of people who are in the, let's say, legacy business. We call them the potential adopters, and those who relapse to the legacy system, and they have a certain productivity. And this is generating a flow of revenue every month. And with a time delay, we can also recognize the revenue. So for example, let's say you are selling now a software as a service solution, and there might be a delay of a quarter or 6 months, or maybe even only 1 month, until you see the revenues coming in from your clients. Now, in our case, we have 2 of these flows. So we have the legacy business, and we have the revenue from the innovation. So the innovation revenue is coming from people who are trying the new innovation to some degree, but more importantly from those who have adopted the innovation. So this pool of people is basically driving the uptake and generating more revenue. Now, the interesting part that we are interested in is what is the ratio of the new revenue relative to the legacy revenue, or relative to the overall revenue. And so our assumption is the following here, that let's say if both are equal, nothing really happens. But if the portion of innovation-driven revenue is fairly low or 0, then the legacy business becomes more attractive and is preferred. But as the innovation is picking up speed and generating more revenue, then the innovation business is more interesting for people to adopt. So they start selling more of this product because it's helping them to accomplish their goal. Just very, let's say, rational behavior. And so at the midpoint, nothing really happens. Now, the key question is, if we put this together in a simulation model, and again, I'm not doing a simulation modeling class here, but I put this together for your benefit in the background. And let's take a look at the basic scenario. So I mentioned we have an organization of 1,000 people. And in month 3, we have an innovation that is starting. And the innovation is simply in these terms that it generates a 30% higher revenue than the legacy system. Okay, and let's say we are starting with easy assumptions, so that once it's starting, we have the management commitment 100% on this new product, and people who are trying the new product will adopt it to a large degree. So we apply here our 80-20 rule, that 80% of the people will probably adopt it and 20% not. Now let's see what's happening. When we do the simulations, here's what we get from this scenario. Now, and I am showing here by each of the pools or the stocks. So the pool of potential adopters is going down as people are trying to adopt the new service or new product. So we have an increasing number of people trying it, and some of them will move forward and adopting the solution. So to a large degree, they are adopting the solution. And some people will relapse. So we have also a certain fraction of people not doing that. And specifically, there's a noticeable peak here in the month probably 11 or 12. Now, that's an interesting point. And if we put these curves together, here's what we basically see. So this is all together on the same time axis. This is the curve of the potential adopters, and the red curve is the curve of the adopters who have adopted the innovation. And it's interesting to see that we, of course, have a large number of people that are trying the innovation, but also with a certain delay, we have some people who are reverting back to the legacy system. And then that could be a problem. So if it's, let's say, it would be growing much further, that could actually turn the whole story upside down here. Now, in terms of the transformation, I would like to point out 3 critical moments of a transformation or innovation initiative. And number 1 would be here, of course, when people are starting to relapse and going towards the legacy product. And you can see that is happening here with a certain time delay. The second critical moment is here, number 2, where the number of people who relapsed to the legacy solution is larger, so it's above the curve of those who adopted the innovation. That's usually not a good sign. So the discussion that you're facing in an organization is typically, how could this happen? More and more people are not using it. What's wrong with that, etc. And it usually creates a lot of ripple effect and sometimes even some panic in organizations. But then an interesting other point here, number 3, is when a peak is reached on this green curve here, which is basically the people who went back to the legacy support. So something must be happening here. And that is, of course, a very interesting point because that's the point when the favorable feedback kicks in. Now, the question is, next question I want to ask is, what is driving the adoption of innovation in this case? So how come that we get this curve? So the first interesting question is, how do we get people to start trying the new solution? So how do we get people into this testing flow? And this is driven, as you can see here, and look at the time scale also. This is driven first and foremost through the management push, which creates a peak somewhere here. And then only later, the word of mouth is kicking in. And that's, of course, true, because word of mouth can only happen once we have people in the process. So that's why it's so important to initiate the innovation and give it a great start so that it can succeed and can move forward, of course. Now, the feedback also that is evolving here basically shows that the results are driving further adoption. And an interesting point is here, as I mentioned before, in the month about 12, because here we are passing this point where the unfavorable feedback is basically turned around into favorable feedback, because a larger portion of the revenue is driven by the innovation, right? And so I'm taking here innovation as one example that could be, and if it's let's say an internal tool that you use, it might not be about innovation, but it could be the number of people or the number of transactions or leads or so that you manage in the CRM, etc. So that's important to monitor. And again, what happens is at that point in time is that our feedback structure is basically turned around. So the unfavorable feedback is dying down, and then suddenly the favorable feedback is kicking in. So that drives a strong dynamic here, of course. Now, the next question is then, of course, why do innovation initiatives fail? So if this is so easy, and there could be many reasons. So what you often hear in organizations is, well, this is not a priority right now, which points you to a lack of commitment, or, oh, this takes way too long, which means that management is reducing their commitment too early and moving back to the day-to-day business. Or you hear things like the daily business comes first, which basically means that managers are reluctant to release their employees, for example, to formal training or to try out new things, which might not generate revenue in the beginning. And also, an indicator could be things like, well, it's not sure if this is working. and that could point you to a delay in the recognition of progress and results. So here comes in the importance of information system and to provide timely information about the initiatives. And the lack of change management in the initiative is typically demonstrated by things like this, when people say you can try this in your own time at your own priority. So that indicates that there's a lack of commitment behind it. And of course, a serious change initiative needs to make sure that people are actually brought in touch with the innovation in a very positive and effective way. And the worst thing is obviously when you don't even know that there's a new innovation or a new product or a new tool in your organization. And you hear this in conversation by people saying, oh, I didn't know we have this new such and such, right? So I put this together, and we can talk this detailed through in the extended version of the briefing session here, but I put together a couple of failure modes just to show you what the movements would look like. And if things go well, we might have an online tool for this chapter here so that you can play with these assumptions also by yourself. Now, some of these things are more serious than others, but there are some areas where you can see which can bring the whole system to a halt, or leading to let's say, a decline of the innovation. And sometimes it's not, let's say, carried on for a large period of time, extended period of time. Sometimes people or the managers pull the plug, and then the whole change initiative is over. That's usually a problem. But it could also be something like this curve over here, which is, I believe, the delay in engaging people in a trial. So there, of course, it will take forever for the innovation to kick off. And now these are performance scenarios, and there's no right or wrong with this, but I wanted just to show you that whatever lever you pull, and sometimes people are identifying the lever and then they still pull it in the wrong direction. But there are many levers in this scenario, and of course, that leads us to a number of growth tactics that we could potentially revisit here. So for the kickoff webinar for this week, I wanted to leave it with a number of conclusions before I go into the Q&A. So just to conclude, the organizational support is really critical for your innovation and transformation initiative. Well, it's obviously clear, but so many organizations are struggling with that, and so many good innovations are dying in their own organization and never see the daylight. So it's important to understand how to overcome this resistance or inertia in an organization. The transition, as we've seen, to an innovation is a highly dynamic process which plays out over time. It's not a linear process. It involves several feedback loops. And we have simplified it here today. What we can do later in the whole course program is to connect this particular model to the other areas. For example, when we see that there's an issue with product development, or we have a quality issue, and we can investigate more, okay, what is doing that to the internal adoption of the product, and what are the feedback repercussions into the marketplace and vice versa. Now, with the dynamic simulations, you have a tool where you can actually fast forward into the future at zero cost, and you can identify suitable strategies and tactics. And this is helping to at least ask the right questions and to drive an alignment in the organization. But more importantly, it helps to evolve a new mental model about your change initiative and your company that you want to advance. So a couple of things on our checklist here. First, it's important to prime the pump. So managers really need to make sure that people very quickly starting to adopt the new process, because otherwise you cannot leverage and reinforce the feedback loops. In order to do that, make sure to provide opportunities for innovation discovery, which means bringing people together in larger meetings, doing strategy conferences, or some other tactics that I will cover a bit more in the extended version. including some very innovative ideas like strategy conferences in combination with, let's say, an internal crowdfunding campaign. So I will show you how you can do that and what the implications are. Then oftentimes it's necessary, not only when you get stuck, but beforehand, before you drive an innovation, to review the management system and identify bottlenecks and delays before you actually go and roll out an innovation. Change communication is clear, as we've seen from some of these scenarios. If you have lack of communication, that means people are unaware. That really hinders the uptake on a broader scale. And reduce the information delays. That's really key, not only in terms of, let's say, revenue recognition on the balance sheet, but really driving the information to the people in the organization. And there are so many great tools which take advantage of that today, but people also need to learn and understand how to read the dashboard and report information, for example. Engage the organization early in the process. I cannot overemphasize that. That is often the key, that people do not want to be surprised. But more importantly, if you have a group of very passionate early adopters, they're usually the nucleus for your new next generation product. And then it's important to really understand the drivers of non-adoption and relapsing. So really understand the reasons why people are not adopting, why people are reverting back to the legacy support. Legacy systems, and go from there. Now we will hear more about this in the extended module. And before, again, I take a couple of questions in the Q&A, live Q&A here today. Just want to make sure you understand that there's an extended briefing with more videos, Q&A, and what I call group coaching opportunities. So you can ask questions and we can handle some of the issues there. And usually I provide some templates, tools, and so on. So if you're interested and you like this topic, then watch out for the sequel to this webinar, which is going more into details. So sign up at the same address for the next webinars. There's also an option where you auto-subscribe, so you get all the information and all the replays. For those who are on the webinar, you'll find in the live webinar only the introductory offer, so that you can use. You get a super discount on the entire coaching program. And here again, the information, there's no risk involved, comes with a 30 days money back guarantee. Okay, I want to pick up a couple of questions now for the Q&A. Let me see if something came in. So there's one question here, which was talking about how to engage a large organization. So when we're not only talking about 1,000, but tens of thousands of employees. As I mentioned before, there are different tactics to do that. I myself have worked in large and with large organizations on strategic initiatives. And there are tactics like, for example, conducting strategy conferences, or you do a roadshow around the world. And you can engage people also in fairly innovative ways, like let's say an organized internal crowdfunding, right, which gives you some ideas about how people think about innovation, and it also comes with a lot of side benefits. I'm happy to explore that topic a bit more with you in the extended section. Then a question is here, how would you proceed with a project that is on the edge, which means on the edge of success or a disaster? It depends on how you see it. Well, I would say this sounds like a turnaround situation. So the first thing that I would do is first diagnose what is happening here. So what's wrong with the product maybe, or the innovation? Why are people not adopting it? And really do thorough research and discovery. What are the reasons? Because while you have many levers that you can pull and drive a turnaround of a project also internally in the organization, you really need to understand what are the root causes and what are the reasons for this project getting stuck and not being successful. So that's the first thing that I would do. And then typically the way how I work is we have a strategy dialogue, and then we test out different scenarios and see how they would play out. For that, we have our, let's say, flight simulators for the organization, which are typically adjust slightly to the needs and the circumstances of an organization. But I mean, easily with this basic version, you can explore things. So you can plug in the numbers of your organization. That, by the way, brings me to another question, which is often asked. Where do you know the parameters or the numbers that you put in the model? Well, first of all, the model in itself is a generic simulation model, which can deal with different scenarios. So it doesn't matter if I put in there 1,000 or 100,000 potential employees in an organization. Now, the assumptions about, for example, the time it takes until you roll out a program, or assumption about how many people adopt the program. In the beginning, we would make assumptions. And this is a good way to force us to have a dialogue and articulate the assumptions that we would have anyways, right? If we would roll out the program in an organization, the innovation, we have a certain assumption or a certain mental model about how it would work out, what people would do. So this dialogue is forcing us in a good way to bring these assumptions to the daylight. And that's an important side effect, of course. It's a very important communication. Okay, question here is about how to get information on the word of mouth. I like the concept very much. It's actually very true for our organization here. But how can I get the information? Well, of course, you know, when you're already in motion and the initiative is going on, I suggest you take a look at your, for example, your sales reports or your internal reports. For every innovation that you undertake, I would highly recommend to think from the beginning how you design management information or insights into the product so that you have the right level of information available. And again, the flight simulator also helps us to understand, okay, where should we put priorities in terms of measurement points? Now, specifically to your question, the word of mouth, there's several ways to do that. So either you can find that, for example, in your internal reports, the number of people who have adopted it or have adopted it or not adopting it anymore. I think you can get this information fairly easily from your CRM, from your sales report. Another way to do it, if the information is not easily available, is you can run a survey. And we certainly like to do this with our clients, specifically when it comes to understanding the reasons for adoption and non-adoption. That's very key. And it also helps us to firm up the parameters that we are working with. So in a step-by-step fashion, we can then figure out, okay, if we are 1 to 3 months into a program, where is it going? Does it have a success potential, or are we running the risk of basically having to abandon the project? Okay. Then one question here, which I think should be the last question then, because we have taken pretty much time for this extensive topic today. But the question here is, I see that some companies are doing beta programs. Would this be a good idea for, let's say, an organizational change initiative? Or here it says an internal program. Absolutely. The reason why I say this is a good idea is because you can actually use this to prime the pump. So by engaging people early on in a pre-release version of a new product, a new program, or an internal tool, you basically not only get feedback early on, but you have already the first adopters who can speak highly about the product. And then ideally you have influencers who have let's say, very good networks in the organization, and then who can carry the message forward, so who become ambassadors of the innovation. And that gives you a head start. I have not modeled that here specifically, but it's easy to do in our session, and I will take that as one of the scenarios which I'd like to show in the extended version. Okay, I think that was it for today. Thank you for joining. Thank you for also the questions here today. And I'm looking forward to see you in the extended version and in the upcoming webinar. So again, take a look at the curriculum. You can find that on the course website, or simply sign up to the next webinar. We will cover new and great topics, and there will be a second iteration of this topic. So make sure you are receiving the information for that. Thank you, and good luck with your transformation.